In this video, I'm going to walk you through the storied history of college athletics, how the institutions make money, why the athletes aren't allowed to make money, and how name, image, and likeness is changing the trajectory of college athletics as we know it. Now, it might come as a surprise to you, but college athletics has been around for almost 200 years, and it all started with a rowing competition held by Yale and Harvard back in 1843. A few years later, baseball made it into the college ranks in the 1850s, followed by track and field about a decade later. And finally, the first intercollegiate football game took place between Rutgers and Princeton on November 6th of 1869. And now, about 150 years later, college athletics is a multi-billion-dollar industry, with some of the top teams drawing hundreds of thousands of fans to the campuses every weekend. But the one thing that has never changed in the long and storied history of college athletics is the fact that the student athlete who helped develop this complex and ever-evolving industry have never been compensated for their participation. But this begs the question, why aren't the universities, athletic conferences, and the NCAA required to pay their student athletes? Well, it all comes down to the definition of an amateur versus a professional athlete. According to uslegal.com, the most basic difference between amateur and professional athletes lies in the rewards that each group receives for athletic performances. Amateur athletes are not paid for their athletic performances. Professional athletes, by contrast, are typically paid annual salaries plus incentives tied to individual and team performance. Athletic scholarships are the biggest reward offered to amateur athletes, and they pay for some or all of a student athlete's tuition, including room and board. And amateur athletes who are compensated for their athletic performances outside of the normal athletic scholarship requirements can be stripped of their amateur status by the NCAA. This means that although the universities are able to generate revenue based off of the performances of their athletes and teams, because these individuals are considered amateur student athletes and are compensated with an athletic scholarship, the universities aren't required to pay them at all. Now, for the longest time, this didn't make sense to me because everybody knows that college athletics is a billion-dollar industry. And just to give you a sense of the size and scale of some of these top-tier athletic programs, in 2022 alone, The Ohio State University generated about $251 million in revenue from their athletics department and were required to pay the student athletes $0. And now I know a lot of people will say that the athletes are receiving a free education and they shouldn't complain about not being compensated anything over that, because in some instances, this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what a lot of people don't know is that most of these major institutions, universities, and colleges alike aren't even the ones that are funding these athletic scholarships. Most of the time, wealthy individuals and their families donate large sums of money to a university's athletic endowment program, which then goes on to fund the athletic scholarships that they offer to kids on a year-in, year-out basis. And this means that for most top-tier programs out there, the universities don't have to sacrifice any of the revenue that they receive when giving out athletic scholarships, because this money is being paid by an outside donor. What's worse is that when I was a student athlete, everybody knew about this. And in camp, every single year, we had to write a handwritten letter thanking that particular donor for providing our education, not the university. Now, all of this may seem like it's a lot to think about and super complicated, but I'll break it down into simple terms. Universities are allowed to accept hundreds of millions of dollars of donor funds to help build out their athletic facilities, fund these athletic scholarships, and even fund their own operations. They then receive millions of dollars from TV sponsorships, athletic apparel deals, and the revenue generated from ticket sales and concessions. And out of the roughly $250 million that some of these top tier programs generate on an annual basis, they're required to pay their amateur student athletes $0. Now, I don't know how they did it, but it seems to me like the NCAA is operating one of, if not the most profitable business model I've ever seen in my life. And it's all based off of the definition between amateur and professional athletics. Now, all of this was shaken up in mid-August of 2015 when Ed O'Bannon filed a lawsuit on behalf of Division I football and men's basketball programs against the NCAA and EA Sports. And this stemmed from commercials, sponsorships, jersey sales, and even video games that utilize the likeness of college athletes to not only promote, but also enrich the brand of the NCAA. And this lawsuit challenged the NCAA's use of the images and likeness of the current and former student athletes for commercial purposes. He also argued that student athletes should be entitled to a portion of the revenue generated by the NCAA anytime it utilized their name, image, or likeness. And this should be received either when the student athlete graduates or after their college career is over. And to the surprise of many, he won this lawsuit. The U.S. District Court found that the NCAA violated antitrust laws and that they unreasonably restricted trade and commerce for these student athletes. And because of this decision, EA Sports was ordered to pay out over $40 million to current and former student athletes that they had illegally exploited by using their name, image, and likeness in all of their video games. And after a few years of backlash following this decision, the NCAA finally initiated a policy titled Name, Image, and Likeness, which officially granted the athletes the ability to accept compensation based off of their name, image, and likeness, regardless of the school that they went to. And while this policy did open up the doors for college athletes to start receiving compensation for sponsorships, appearances, or promoting businesses, the policy in all three divisions preserves the commitment to avoid pay for play and improper inducements tied to choosing a particular school. And now, this is a subtle sentence, but why is this so important? Well, the NCAA said that this new policy preserves the fact that college sports are not pay for play. And they made it crystal clear that any new rules created by the NCAA must strive to maintain these current principles. But what does that actually mean? In short, this gives college athletes the green light to go out and generate income based off of their name, image, and likeness, but it does not require the universities to pay them directly, nor does it grant the ability for the college athletes to participate in any type of profit sharing based off of the revenue that the athletic departments generate on a year-in and year-out basis. And the cherry on top is the fact that they would still be able to classify these individuals as amateur student athletes and not employees of the universities that they attended. Now that you have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes in college athletics, you can start to see why NIL is such a big step in the right direction. But in my opinion, it still has a long way to go. For starters, only a select few of these student athletes across the country can generate any type of revenue based off of their name, image, and likeness. But the vast majority of student athletes will never see a dime from this change in policy. And more importantly, NIL deals can only come from outside businesses and organizations that are not linked to a particular university. And my question for you is, do you think that's fair? In my opinion, no. I think at this point we can all agree that college athletic programs are a business. And just like how prestigious companies go out into the marketplace and offer top dollar for top talent, universities should be held to that same standard. Every student athlete should be compensated not only by an athletic scholarship, but also from all of the revenue generated via the NCAA, the universities, and the athletic conferences. Because after all, without these athletic performances from the amateur athletes, they wouldn't be receiving any of this revenue at all. And I know what you might be thinking. This is just going to lead to a few top teams in every region of the country, and a lot of the smaller programs are just going to fall by the wayside because they can't compete with these massive budgets. But my rebuttal to that would be, this is America. And this is how capitalism works. And I think that over the next few years, the NCAA is going to have to undergo a massive overhaul to change and update these old and antiquated policies, because the athletes are starting to wake up and realize that they're the product of a billion-dollar industry. But in order to make this change, the athletes are going to have to do the unthinkable. Band together, sit out, and demand systemic changes to the ideals that have entrenched this institution for the past 200 years. Will this be easy? Absolutely not. But the only way to make true change is by taking away the most profitable piece of the equation and seeing how long it takes for the NCAA and these other large institutions to budge. And I guarantee you, it won't take long.